My name is Rebecca Michelle, I'm 28, and last month I discovered my parents gave my entire $60,000 wedding fund to my older sister for her house down payment. When I confronted them, they called me selfish. The money was meant for my dream wedding with James, my fiancé of 6 months. He's furious, but I'm just heartbroken. I've always lived in my sister Amanda's shadow, but this betrayal cuts deeper than anything before. Now our wedding plans are in shambles, and I'm left wondering if I've ever truly mattered to my family at all. Before I tell you how my world came crashing down, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by the people who should have had your back, and stick around to see if justice was ever served in this family drama. Growing up as the younger Michelle daughter was an exercise in inevitability. From the day I was born, my sister Amanda, 3 years my senior at 31 now, was the golden child. Our parents, Robert and Catherine Michelle, built their lives around her accomplishments and needs, while I learned to take up as little space as possible. Dad is a corporate attorney with one of Boston's prestigious firms, and Mom works as a hospital administrator. They're both driven, successful people who value achievement above all else. Amanda inherited their ambition and charisma, becoming the perfect reflection of their values. She was the debate team captain, homecoming queen, and valedictorian, triple threat that made our parents beam with pride at every turn. I still remember my 10th birthday when Dad missed my small celebration because Amanda had a regional swim meet. Mom made it for the cake cutting but spent the entire time on the phone getting updates about Amanda's performance. When they came home that night, the house erupted in celebration because Amanda had placed second. My birthday became an afterthought, and I went to bed washing them toast to her success through my cracked bedroom door. That pattern repeated throughout our childhood. Amanda's Science Fair project got a dedicated workspace in Dad's home office, while I did my homework at the kitchen table between dinner prep and cleanup. When I brought home straight A's, Mom would nod and say, "That's expected, Rebecca." When Amanda got a single A among her B's, there would be a special dinner out to celebrate her improvement. I adapted by becoming the perfect second child, quiet, self-sufficient, and undemanding. I learned to take pride in my independence, telling myself I didn't need their validation. I became a master at anticipating others' needs, a consummate people pleaser. I helped Mom with chores without being asked, completed school projects early, and never created problems. I thought maybe if I was perfect enough, they'd finally see me. My grandparents' Dad's parents were my salvation. Grandpa James, my fiancé's namesake, and Grandma Rose saw what was happening and made special time just for me. They'd pick me up every other Saturday for what they called Rebecca Day, where we'd go to museums, bakeries, or just sit in their garden and read together. Those were the only times I felt truly seen. When I was 16, they took me to lunch at our favorite cafe and told me they'd started a special fund just for my future wedding. "Every girl deserves her special day," Grandma said, squeezing my hand. "When the time comes, you'll have what you need to celebrate your love properly." They initially put in $20,000, money they'd been saving for years, and continued adding to it annually. Over time, that fund grew to $60,000. Despite living in Amanda's shadow, I managed to forge my own path. I worked hard through high school, earned a scholarship to Northeastern University, and graduated with a degree in environmental science. I now work for a nonprofit focused on coastal conservation, not as high-powered as my sister's marketing executive role, but fulfilling in ways my parents never seemed to understand. 3 years ago, at a beach cleanup event my organization was hosting, I met James Taylor. He was volunteering with his company's community service group, and we connected while picking up trash along the shoreline. He asked for my number after we debated the best approach to eliminating single-use plastics, and I knew he was different from anyone I'd dated before. James is thoughtful and perceptive, with a quiet confidence that draws people to him. He works as a software engineer but has a passion for marine life that matches my own environmental interests. From our first date, a walk through the New England Aquarium followed by clam chowder at a local seafood joint, I felt completely comfortable with him. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove my worth or compete for attention. When James proposed 6 months ago during a sunrise hike along the coast, I cried not just because I was happy to commit to him, but because I finally felt I had someone firmly in my corner. He'd gotten to know my family dynamic over our 3 years together and had become my strongest advocate, gently encouraging me to set boundaries with my parents and sister. The engagement brought a new excitement to my life. For once, I would be the center of attention for something joyful and important. James and I began planning our wedding, nothing extravagant but meaningful to us both. With the wedding fund my grandparents had established, plus some savings of our own, we could have the celebration we dreamed of without financial stress. Little did I know that my moment in the sun would be eclipsed yet again, in the most painful way imaginable. When my grandparents established my wedding fund on my 16th birthday, it felt like the first thing that was truly mine alone. Grandpa James had pulled me aside after our lunch and explained how they'd set it up. "Rebecca, your grandmother and I have opened an account in your name," he said, his voice serious but kind. "We've put $20,000 in it to start, and we'll add what we can each year. When you find the right person and decide to get married, this money will be there for you to have the wedding you deserve." I remember being stunned by the amount. It seemed astronomical to my teenage mind. But more than the money itself, the gesture represented something I rarely felt in my family: prioritization. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, not quite believing it. Grandma Rose put her arm around me. "Because you matter, sweetheart. Your special days matter. And we want you to know that someone is planning for your happiness." They explained that the fund would remain in their control until I got engaged, at which point they would transfer it to me. After Grandpa passed away 4 years ago, Grandma Rose continued their tradition of adding to the fund. By the time James proposed, it had grown to just over $60,000. When I called Grandma Rose the night of our engagement, the first thing she said after congratulating us was, "It's time for you to have your fun, dear. Your grandfather would be so happy to know it's finally going to be used for its purpose." The following weekend, she showed me all the documentation. The account had grown through their careful additions and some modest investments. She explained that she'd speak to my parents about transferring control to me, as they had been made secondary custodians after Grandpa died. With what I thought was financial security for our wedding, James and I began planning in earnest. We created spreadsheets, Pinterest boards, and a shared digital folder filled with ideas and inspiration. We wanted a coastal ceremony that honored our love of the ocean and how we met. We found a perfect venue, a historic boathouse on the North Shore that had been converted into an event space, with wide windows overlooking the Atlantic. "I can just see us saying our vows with the ocean behind us," James said as we toured the space. The rental fee was steep at $15,000, but the wedding fund made it possible. We tentatively selected a date for the following June, giving us a full year to plan. The venue coordinator penciled us in, pending our deposit of $7,500 to secure the date. We also researched caterers specializing in sustainable seafood, florists who could work with native coastal plants, and photographers who captured the kind of natural, tended moments we wanted to remember. I found a dress designer who created flowing, beach-friendly gowns, and scheduled a consultation. James and his groomsmen discussed renting linen suits in soft blue tones that would complement the ocean setting. We drafted a guest list of 150 people, keeping it intimate enough to have quality time with everyone who attended. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely excited about being the center of attention. This wasn't about competing with Amanda. It was about celebrating the family James and I were creating together. I even dared to hope that seeing me so happy might heal some of the distance with my parents. James's family was wonderfully supportive. His parents, Michael and Diana, offered to host and pay for the rehearsal dinner. His sister Emma, who works in graphic design, volunteered to create our invitations and wedding website as her gift to us. The contrast between their enthusiasm and my parents' lukewarm response was noticeable but not surprising. When I told my mother about our plans, her first question was whether the coastal theme was a bit too casual for a proper wedding. When I mentioned the venue cost, she raised her eyebrows and said, "That's quite extravagant, don't you think?" I reminded her about the wedding fund, and she nodded distractedly, changing the subject to Amanda's recent promotion. Despite Mom's tepid reaction, I pressed forward with planning. I created detailed budgets, allocating the $60,000 across all aspects of the wedding. The venue and catering would take the largest portions, followed by photography, attire, flowers, and music. We were being careful to leave a buffer for unexpected expenses, and even hoped to have enough left over to put toward our honeymoon. Those months of planning were some of the happiest of my life. James and I would spend evenings after work looking through vendor websites, reading reviews, and imagining our perfect day. I started a wedding planning journal, filling it with fabric swatches, color palettes, and notes about everything from table settings to playlist suggestions. The only cloud on the horizon was my parents' strange evasiveness whenever I brought up accessing the wedding fund. Initially, I attributed it to their busy schedules and general disinterest in my affairs. Mom would say things like, "We'll need to sit down with the bank," or "Your father needs to find some paperwork first." After several weeks of these delays, I began to worry. "Do you think there's something wrong with the fund?" I asked James one night as we finalized our choices for save-the-date cards. "I'm sure it's fine," he reassured me. "Your parents are probably just being their usual selves, making your wedding a low priority." I wanted to believe him, but a knot of anxiety had formed in my stomach. The venue coordinator had emailed twice about the deposit deadline, and we'd have to commit to the caterer soon as well. I decided to be more direct with my mother. "Mom, I need to access the wedding fund this week to place deposits," I said firmly during our next phone call. "The venue won't hold our date much longer," she sighed. "All right, Rebecca, let's go to the bank tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 9. Her tone should have warned me that something was wrong, but I was so relieved to finally be moving forward that I missed the resignation in her voice. I had no idea that the next morning would shatter all my wedding dreams and reveal just how little my happiness mattered to my family. The morning that changed everything started normally enough. I wore a summery dress and brought my folder of wedding vendor contracts, excited to finally place our deposit. Mom arrived at my apartment looking tense, but I attributed it to her busy schedule and general discomfort with emotions. "I thought we'd stop for coffee first," she suggested as I got into her car. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "I'd rather get to the bank," I replied. "The venue coordinator is expecting my email confirmation about the deposit today." Mom nodded silently and drove to the bank. The 10-minute ride felt unusually long as she made strained small talk about the weather and traffic. Something in her demeanor made my stomach tighten with apprehension. At the bank, we were shown to a private office where the manager greeted us. Mom had apparently called ahead. "Mrs. Michelle, Miss Michelle, what can I help you with today?" the manager asked pleasantly. "We need to access a savings account," Mom said, her voice tight. "It was established by my in-laws for Rebecca's wedding." The manager nodded and began typing on his computer. After a few moments, he turned the screen slightly toward us. "Is this the account you're referring to?" I leaned forward, eager to finally see the fund that would make our wedding possible. What I saw instead made my blood run cold. The account balance read $3,274.59. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ear. "The balance should be over $60,000. The manager looked uncomfortable. "Let me check the transaction history." A few more keystrokes, and he turned the screen further toward us. There were several large withdrawals over the past 2 months. The most recent was 3 weeks ago for $35,000. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The transactions showed systematic emptying of the account. $15,000, then $10,000, and finally $35,000. All authorized by my parents. "Mom," I turned to her, hoping desperately for an explanation that would make sense of this nightmare. "What happened to my wedding fund?" My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. "Rebecca, we need to discuss this at home, with your father." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "We need to discuss it now." "Where is my money?" The bank manager discreetly excused himself, leaving us alone in the glass-walled office. Only then did my mother look at me. "Amanda and Mark needed help with their house down payment," she said, as if that explained everything. "Their landlord sold their building, and with the baby, they needed to find a place quickly. The market is so competitive right now." I couldn't process what I was hearing. "You gave my wedding fund to Amanda." "All of it." "Not all of it," Mom said defensively, gesturing to the screen. "There's still some left. $3,000. Our venue deposit alone is $7,500. My voice rose with each word. "How could you do this? That money was for my wedding. Grandma and Grandpa saved it specifically for me." "Your sister has a family now," Mom replied, a familiar note of dismissal entering her voice. "House is an investment in their future. You and James are both working. You can save up for a wedding." I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called my father at his office. When his assistant put me through, I didn't even give him a chance to speak. "Dad, I'm at the bank with Mom. Why is my wedding fund empty?" There was a heavy silence before he answered. "Rebecca, this isn't a conversation for the phone. Come to dinner tonight, and we'll explain everything." "I want an explanation now," I insisted, tears threatening to spill over. "Tonight." 6 o'clock, he said firmly and hung up. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I called James at work, barely able to speak through my tears as I explained what had happened. He left immediately to meet me at my apartment, where I'd curled up on the couch in shock. How could they do this? I kept asking as James held me. It wasn't their money to give away. We're going to that dinner, James said, his jaw set in anger. And they're going to explain themselves. At 6 o'clock sharp, we arrived at my parents' house in Brookline. Amanda's car was already in the driveway, which made my stomach clench. Of course they'd included her in this family meeting. The scene in the dining room was surreal. Mom had prepared a full dinner, as if this were a normal family gathering. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking stern and immovable. Amanda and her husband Mark sat across from my empty chair, Amanda bouncing their 6-month-old son on her knee. Rebecca, James, sit down, Dad directed as we entered. Dinner's getting cold. I'm not hungry, I said flatly. I want to know why you gave my wedding fund to Amanda. Dad sighed as if I were being difficult. Sit down, and we'll discuss this civilly. James placed a supportive hand on my back as we took our seats. I noticed he left his plate empty in silent solidarity. Your sister was in a difficult position, Dad began in his lawyer voice. Mark's company had layoffs, and they lost their rental when the owner decided to sell. With little to consider, they needed stable housing immediately. They found the perfect family home, Mom chimed in, passing a bowl of potatoes that no one took. But they were short on the down payment, even with what they'd saved. We explored every option, Mark added, looking genuinely uncomfortable. Bank loans, borrowing from my parents, even looking at cheaper houses further out. But nothing was working out, Amanda continued, not quite meeting my eyes. The baby wasn't sleeping in our temporary apartment, Mark was stressed about finding a new job, and the housing market was just getting more expensive by the day. So you decided to solve their problems with my money, I said, the hurt making my voice crack. Money that Grandma and Grandpa saved specifically for my wedding. It was a family emergency, Dad stated firmly. The fund was always meant to benefit the family. No, it wasn't, I shot back. Grandma and Grandpa set it up specifically for my wedding. They told me so when I was 16. They wanted to make sure I had a special day. Rose and James would understand the practical considerations, Mom said dismissively. A house for a young family takes precedence over a party. My wedding is not just a party, I was nearly shutting now. And even if it were, that money was designated for me. Not for Amanda. Again, Amanda's eyes welled with tears. Becca, I'm so sorry this upset you. We truly had nowhere else to turn. We'll pay you back, I promise. When? James spoke for the first time, his voice calm but hard. And how? Mark doesn't have a job, you have a new mortgage and a baby. When exactly will you come up with $60,000? Amanda looked to our parents for help, and Dad cleared his throat. We thought perhaps a smaller wedding would be more appropriate anyway. Something intimate, at the house or a local restaurant. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We had plans. We were about to put down deposits. The wedding is in less than a year. That's plenty of time to adjust your expectations, Mom said, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled away. My expectations. I expected to use the money that was promised to me. Money that my grandparents saved for me. Rebecca, Dad's voice took on the stern tone he used when he would tolerate no further argument. Family helps family in times of need. Amanda needed help more than you do right now. I'm disappointed by your selfishness. My selfishness, the accusation felt like a slap. How am I selfish for wanting what was promised to me? What was explicitly saved for me? Because a house is more important than wedding centerpieces and party favors, Mom stated as if it were obvious. Amanda has a baby to consider. A baby she chose to have, James interjected. Just like she and Mark chose their careers, their lifestyle, and their financial decisions. None of that entitles them to Rebecca's wedding fund. The dining room erupted into chaotic argument. Dad accused James of being disrespectful, Mom tried to placate everyone with offers of dessert, and Amanda began crying while clutching No, who started wailing in response to the tension. Thank you, she sobbed, looking at our parents. Thank you for helping us when we had nowhere else to turn. Our new house is perfect for No to grow up in. I watched this display in stunned silence, recognizing the familiar pattern. Amanda in distress, parents rushing to soothe her, my feelings irrelevant. But this time, I couldn't swallow my hurt and fade into the background. I can't do this anymore, I said, standing up. You've made it abundantly clear where I stand in this family. You're being dramatic, Dad dismissed. No, I'm finally seeing things clearly. I turned to Amanda. enjoy your house. I hope it was worth sacrificing your relationship with your sister. James stood beside me, taking my hand. We're leaving now. When you're ready to make this right, you know how to reach us. As we walked out, Mom called after us, Rebecca, don't leave like this. We're still family. James drove us home in silence, occasionally squeezing my hand as I stared out the window, tears streaming down my face. The magnitude of the betrayal was still sinking in, along with the realization that our wedding plans were now in shambles. But beneath the grief, something else was stirring, a resolve I'd never felt before. This time, I wouldn't just accept being overlooked. This time, I would stand up for myself. The days following the disastrous family dinner blurred together in a haze of grief and anger. I called the venue coordinator first thing the next morning to explain that we needed more time before placing our deposit. Her sympathetic tone, when I briefly outlined the situation, only made me feel worse. I can hold your date until the end of next week, she offered. But after that, I'm afraid we have another couple interested. James and I spent hours recalculating our budget, looking at our savings and what we could reasonably set aside from our monthly incomes. The reality was stark. Even if we cut corners everywhere and delayed the wedding by a year, we'd be lucky to save $20,000, far short of what we needed for the celebration we'd planned. We could look at different venues, James suggested gently, his laptop open to a spreadsheet of alternatives. Maybe something smaller, or in the off-season. I nodded mechanically, but my heart wasn't in it. Every alternative felt like a compromise forced upon us by my family's betrayal. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my parents and Amanda. Mom's texts alternated between guilt trips and attempts to downplay the situation. You've always been so independent, Rebecca, I know you'll figure this out. We're just trying to support both our daughters. Amanda's situation was dire. Your grandparents would want the family to stick together through this. Dad's messages were more direct. Your behavior was unacceptable. James was disrespectful to this family. Family comes first, Rebecca. That means supporting your sister when she needs it. This tantrum needs to end. Call your mother, she's upset. Amanda's texts were the worst, full of performative remorse without any real acknowledgement of the harm done. I'm so sorry you're upset, Becca, you know I love you. The house has a beautiful backyard perfect for a wedding, you could use it for free. We named one of the bedrooms the Rebecca room for when you and James visit. No, Mrs. his auntie. I couldn't bring myself to respond to any of them. Each message only reinforced how little they understood or cared about my feeling. James was incensed. They're still making this about Amanda's needs, he fumed after I showed him the latest round of texts. They haven't once acknowledged that they stole from you. Stole. The word hung in the air. I hadn't let myself think of it in those terms, but James was right. My parents had taken money that wasn't theirs to take, money specifically designated for me by my grandparents. With James's encouragement, I called Grandma Rose to tell her what had happened. Her shocked silence spoke volumes. I had no idea, Rebecca, she finally said, her voice tight with anger. Robert assured me the fund was being transferred to you for the wedding. I never would have agreed to them using it for Amanda's house. Her validation meant everything to me, that at least someone in my family was firmly on my side. By the end of the week, I had to cancel our meetings with the caterer and photographer. Each cancellation email felt like another piece of our dream slipping away. I couldn't help but think of Amanda and Mark settling into their new home, a home purchased in part with the money meant for my wedding, while I dismantled my plans piece by piece. On Friday night, I received a group text from my father. Family brunch this Sunday, Grandmother Rose will be there. We need to resolve this situation as a family. James and I debated whether to go. Part of me wanted to continue my silence, to make them feel the weight of what they'd done. But another part, the part that had always sought my parents' approval, wondered if this might be their attempt to make things right. I'll go with you whatever you decide, James said, but don't get your hopes up. I don't think they understand what they've done. Saturday brought a new complication. Amanda posted photos of their new house on Instagram, a charming colonial with a wraparound porch, freshly painted in sage green with white trim. Our forever home, read the caption. In the photos, she and Mark stood proudly on the porch steps, Noah in Amanda's arms, all smiles in the sunshine. The comments were filled with congratulations, including one from my mother. So proud of you both. The perfect home for our perfect grandson. When I saw that, something broke inside me. I threw my phone across the room and collapsed onto my bed in tears. James found me there an hour later when he returned from his run. "She's flaunting it," I sobbed as he held me. "And Mom is celebrating. They don't care at all about what they've done to us." That night, I had my first panic attack, a terrifying episode where I couldn't catch my breath, my heart raced, and I was certain I was dying. James called a nurse hotline, then held my hand as I followed the breathing exercises they suggested. When it finally passed, I lay exhausted in his arms, hollowed out by grief and anxiety. "I can't go to that brunch," I whispered. "I can't sit across from them and pretend this is a minor disagreement that can be smoothed over with mimosas and small talk." "Then we won't go," James said firmly. "Your mental health comes first." I texted my father a simple message: "We won't be at brunch. I need space right now." His response came immediately: "This is about family unity, Rebecca. Your grandmother is expecting you." I didn't reply, but I did call Grandma Rose directly to explain my absence. She understood completely. "You take the time you need, dear," she said. "I'll handle your parents." Sunday morning, my phone exploded with messages. Apparently, Grandma Rose had confronted my parents about the wedding fund at brunch, causing a scene that ended with her leaving early in disgust. Dad's message was particularly biting. "Your grandmother now has a completely distorted view of the situation. Family loyalty means nothing to you, does it?" That accusation that I was the disloyal one pushed me from grief into rage. I drafted and deleted a dozen responses before settling on one. "Loyalty goes both ways. You betrayed me by giving away what wasn't yours to give. You prioritized Amanda over me, as you always have. I won't apologize for expecting basic fairness and honesty from my parents." The message opened a floodgate. My parents' responses were defensive and dismissive. Dad accused me of being materialistic and immature. Mom lamented that I was tearing the family apart over money. Amanda sent a tearful voice message about how she never meant to hurt me and how the house was for all of us to enjoy as a family. Through it all, James was my rock. When I couldn't face looking at my phone anymore, he screened messages for me. When I couldn't sleep, he stayed up with me watching mindless TV shows. When I wondered aloud if I was overreacting, he reminded me firmly that my feelings were valid. "They're using the same tactics they always have," he pointed out. "They're making you question your own feelings and perceptions. Don't let them." As the week progressed, word of the conflict spread through the extended family. Cousins, aunts, and uncles began taking sides. Some thought I was being petty and selfish. "It's just a wedding," my cousin Jenna texted. Others were appalled by my parents' actions. "That money was earmarked for you by your grandparents," my uncle Steve wrote. "They had no right." The division in the family only added to my stress. I'd never been the center of family drama before. That had always been Amanda's role. Now I felt exposed and judged from all sides, with every relative weighing in on a deeply personal injury. By Wednesday, I was struggling to focus at work. My boss noticed my distraction and called me into her office. To my surprise, when I haltingly explained the situation, she was incredibly supportive. "Take the rest of the week off," she insisted. "This is a significant loss, and you need time to process it." Her validation, treating the theft of my wedding fund as a genuine loss worthy of grief, made me break down in tears right there in her office. At home that afternoon, James suggested we take a weekend away to clear our heads. "We need some distance from all this," he said. "Just a couple of days to breathe and think without your phone buzzing every 5 minutes." The idea of escape was tempting, but before I could agree, James's phone rang. It was his mother, Diana. "I just got off the phone with your mother," she told him, her voice tight with controlled anger. "She called to explain why the wedding might be scaled back and asked if we might consider contributing more." James put the phone on speaker so I could hear. "What did you tell her?" he asked. "I told her that Michael and I would be happy to help you both, but that I found it shocking they would give away Rebecca's wedding fund without consulting her, especially money that came from her grandparents. I felt a rush of gratitude for my future mother-in-law's loyalty." "Your mom wasn't pleased," Diana continued. "She suggested I didn't understand the complexities of their family dynamics. I told her I understood perfectly well what it means to honor a promise to your child." After the call, James looked at me with determination. "We're not letting them ruin our wedding," he said firmly. "If we need to postpone it, scale it back, or even elope, we'll do what feels right for us. But we're not letting them win." For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. James was right, this setback, painful as it was, didn't have to derail our future together. I might have lost my wedding fun, but I'd gained something equally valuable: the clarity to see my family dynamics for what they truly were, and the courage to start setting boundaries. That night, I blocked my parents' and Amanda's numbers, not permanently, but just to give myself some breathing room. Then James and I opened a bottle of wine and began to reimagine our wedding, not as a compromise forced by circumstance, but as a true reflection of our values and love. It was the first step in reclaiming not just our wedding plans, but my sense of self-worth after a lifetime of being the afterthought in my own family. 3 weeks after discovering the theft of my wedding fund, I stood in front of my closet, deliberating what to wear to my grandmother's 75th birthday celebration. Under normal circumstances, I would have been excited for the event. Grandma Rose had always been my strongest advocate in the family. But knowing my parents and Amanda would be there made my stomach churn with anxiety. "We don't have to go," James reminded me, washing from the doorway as I rejected outfit after outfit. "Your grandmother would understand." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not missing Grandma's birthday because of them. Besides, she specifically asked me to come. She said she hasn't seen enough of me lately." In the end, I chose a simple blue dress that Grandma had complimented before. James wore a button-down shirt and khakis, and we stopped for flowers on the way to the restaurant where the family was gathering. My hands trembled as we approached the private dining room. Through the glass doors, I could see my extended family already assembled: aunts, uncles, cousins, and at the center, Grandma Rose in a festive purple outfit. My parents stood near her, Mom fussing with the table arrangements, Dad deep in conversation with my uncle. Amanda and Mark were there too, Amanda bouncing baby No on her hip as she chatted with our cousin Sarah. "Ready?" James squeezed my hand. I took a deep breath and nodded. The room fell into an awkward hush as we entered. Grandma Rose broke the tension by exclaiming, "Rebecca, James, I'm so glad you made it," and hurrying over to embrace us both. After greeting Grandma, we made our way around the room, exchanging polite hellos with relatives. The atmosphere was strained, with family members clearly uncertain how to navigate the obvious tension. Some avoided eye contact, while others were overly effusive, as if compensating for the discomfort. My mother approached with a tight smile. "Rebecca, it's good to see you. You haven't been answering our calls." "I needed some space," I replied quietly, conscious of nearby relatives who might overhear. "Well, I hope we can put all that unpleasantness aside for today," she said, lowering her voice. "It's your grandmother's birthday, after all." Before I could respond, Dad joined us. "James," he acknowledged with a curt nod before turning to me. "Your sister was hoping to speak with you. She's very upset about this rift between you." I looked across the room to where Amanda stood washing us, her expression a familiar blend of expectation and entitlement. "Not now," I said firmly. "I'm here for Grandma, not to make Amanda feel better about what she did." Dad's face hardened. "This attitude isn't helping anything, Rebecca." "Neither is pretending nothing happened," I countered. Grandma Rose called for everyone's attention then, announcing it was time to be seated for lunch. The seating arrangement had James and me at a table with Grandma, my Aunt Patricia, and her husband safely away from my immediate family. As suspected, Grandma had orchestrated this deliberately, and shot her a grateful look as we sat down. Lunch proceeded with superficial pleasantries. I focused on making conversation with Aunt Patricia, asking about her recent trip to Italy and her daughter's college plans. When Grandma asked about our wedding, I gave vague answers about reconsidering our options that made James squeeze my knee supportively under the table. After the main course, as servers cleared plates for dessert, Grandma Rose leaned close to me. "Is everything all right, dear? You seem tense." The concern in her eyes nearly undid me. "I'm fine, Grandma, just trying to get through the day without a scene." She patted my hand. "You know you can tell me anything." Something in her tone made me wonder if she knew more than she was letting on. "Did Mom and Dad tell you what happened with the wedding fund?" I asked quietly. Grandma's expression darkened. "They said something about you being upset over them helping Amanda with a house down payment. They made it sound like a simple misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," my voice broke. "They gave her my entire wedding fund, the money you and Grandpa saved for me, $60,000, gone without even asking me." Grandma's face went from confusion to shock to anger in rapid succession. "They did what?" The intensity of her reaction drew glances from nearby tables. I quickly filled her in on the details, keeping my voice low but unable to hide my hurt. I had no idea, Grandma said, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for her water glass. Robert told me they were helping Amanda with a small loan for her house. He never mentioned your wedding fund. They emptied the account, James added, left barely $3,000. Grandma Rose stood abruptly, her napkin falling to the floor. "Excuse me," she said to the table. Then, with a purposeful stride that belied her 75 years, she marched directly to where my parents were seated. "Robert," she said loudly enough for the entire room to hear, "I need to speak with you, now." The dining room fell silent as my father reluctantly stood. "Mother, perhaps this can wait until after." "It cannot wait," Grandma interrupted. "Rebecca just told me what you did with her wedding fund." A collective intake of breath swept through the room. Every eye turned to watch the confrontation. "Mother, this is hardly the time or place," Dad began. "You took the money, James, and I saved for Rebecca's wedding and gave it to Amanda without permission," Grandma continued, her voice ringing with authority. "Money we specifically designated for Rebecca's future." Mom rose to stand beside Dad. "Rose, you don't understand the circumstances. Amanda and Mark were in a desperate situation." "So you stole from your other daughter?" Grandma's question cut through Mom's excuses like a knife. "That money was not yours to give away, Catherine. It was intended for Rebecca, set aside by her grandfather and me specifically for her wedding day." Amanda stood now too, clutching no to her chest. "Grandma, please don't be angry. We had nowhere else to turn, and Mom and Dad were just trying to help us." "By betraying your sister?" Grandma asked, turning to face Amanda. "Did you know that money was Rebecca's wedding fund when you accepted it?" Amanda's silence was answer enough. "I thought as much," Grandma said grimly. The confrontation had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. Every family member watched in stunned silence as decades of favoritism and inequality were laid bare in Grandma's piercing question. I felt James stand beside me, his hand steady on my shoulder. Across the room, Amanda began to cry, which prompted No to wail in response. Mark looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Rebecca has always come second in this family," Grandma continued, addressing my parents directly. "James and I saw it happening, and we tried to ensure she had at least one thing that was truly hers. You've taken even that from her." "That's not fair," Dad protested. "We've always treated both our daughters equally." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it, drawing all eyes in my direction. The room felt charged with tension as I slowly stood. "Equally," I echoed, finding my voice at last. "When have you ever treated us equally, Dad? When did my accomplishments ever receive the same celebration as Amanda's? When did my needs ever come before hers?" "Rebecca," Mom started. "No," I interrupted, years of suppressed feelings finally breaking free. "I've spent my entire life accepting less attention, less support, less priority. I never complained because I didn't want to seem needy or ungrateful. But this taking money specifically saved for me and giving it to Amanda without even asking, this was too far." Amanda stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Becca, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. We really did need the money, and Mom and Dad said it would be fine." "It's not fine," my voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "It's never been fine, Amanda. You've always taken whatever you wanted, attention, praise, opportunities, and I've always stepped aside. But my wedding fund wasn't yours to take." The room erupted into chaos. Relatives began taking sides, voices overlapping in argument. Uncle Steve defended me loudly, while Aunt Karen insisted Amanda's need as a mother trumped my party plans. Cousins chimed in from all sides. Through it all, Grandma Rose stood firm beside me, her hand finding mine in solidarity. James positioned himself protectively at my other side, forming a united front against the family fracture. Dad attempted to regain control of the situation. "That's enough. This is your grandmother's birthday celebration, and you're ruining it with this selfish display, Rebecca." "Don't you dare call her selfish," James said, his voice quiet but intense. "Rebecca has never been selfish a day in her life. That's the problem. She's always put everyone else first, especially Amanda, and this is how you repay her loyalty and consideration." "You have no right to speak to me that way in my own family," Dad bristled. "He has every right," I countered. "James is going to be my husband, which makes him family. The difference is he actually treats me like I matter." Mom began to cry, which immediately drew Dad and Amanda to comfort her. The familiar tableau, my mother's tears commanding immediate attention while my pain was dismissed, crystallized everything wrong with our family dynamic. I'm done, I said, my voice suddenly calm. I'm done being the afterthought in this family. I'm done watching Amanda take everything while I'm expected to smile and understand. I'm done. I turned to Grandma Rose. I'm sorry about your birthday, Grandma. I love you, but I need to leave now. I understand, sweetheart, she said, kissing my cheek. Then to everyone's surprise, she added, I'm coming with you, I can't stay here either. As we made our way toward the exit, Amanda called out tearfully, Becca, please don't go like this, we're family. I paused at the door, looking back at the scene, my sister clutching her baby, my parents hovering anxiously beside her, relatives divided into factions around the room. Yes, we're family, I agreed quietly, but that doesn't give you the right to take what isn't yours. Not anymore. With that, James, Grandma Rose, and I walked out together. In the parking lot, Grandma insisted on coming back to our apartment. I need to know you're all right, she said, and we have things to discuss. The car ride was quiet, all of us processing the seismic shift that had just occurred in our family. As James drove, I watched Grandma in the rearview mirror, her profile dignified despite the distress of the afternoon. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against my family's unfairness. The cost had been high, possibly irreparable damage to relationships, but I also felt an unexpected lightness. The weight of always accommodating, always accepting less, had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The week following Grandma Rose's birthday meltdown became a period of intense reflection. I took 3 days off work, unable to focus while processing the family explosion and its aftermath. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives, some supportive, others critical of my dramatic exit and disrespect toward my parent. James suggested I might benefit from speaking with a professional, and I reluctantly agreed. The therapist he found specialized in family dynamics and could see me on short notice. Dr. Patel's office was a calm space with soft lighting and plants in every corner. I perched anxiously on the edge of her couch as she asked gentle questions about my family history. Once I started talking, everything poured out: the years of feeling secondary to Amanda, the constant need to be the good daughter, the devastating betrayal of the wedding fund theft. What you're describing is a classic family system with a golden child and a scapegoat, Dr. Patel explained during our second session. Your sister was given the role of the special one, while you were expected to be self-sufficient and undemanding. But why? I asked, the question that had haunted me my entire life. Why her and not me? Family dynamics like these rarely have a rational explanation, she replied. Sometimes it's about which child resembles a parent more, or which temperament fits better with the parent's expectations. The important thing to recognize is that it wasn't because of any deficiency in you. That simple statement that the inequality wasn't my fault hit me with unexpected force. All my life, I'd subconsciously believed that if I were just better, somehow smarter, prettier, more accomplished, my parents would value me equally. Hearing that their favoritism reflected their issues, not mine, was both liberating and heartbreaking. At home, James and I had long conversations about what truly mattered for our wedding and marriage. Sitting on our small balcony one evening, watching the sunset with mugs of tea, we reimagined our plans from scratch. If we strip away all the expectations, James asked, what matters most to you about our wedding day? I thought carefully before answering. Being surrounded by people who genuinely support us. Making promises that mean something. Creating memories we'll treasure, not just putting on a show. Then that's what we focus on, he said simply. We began downsizing our vision. Instead of 150 guests, we considered a list of 50, only those closest to us. Rather than the expensive boathouse venue, we researched public parks with ocean views where we could hold a simple ceremony for a fraction of the cost. We calculated what we could reasonably save over the next year, plus what we already had set aside. My friend Zoe, a talented baker, offered to make our wedding cake as her gift. James's sister Emma was still creating our invitations and website. Another friend who worked as a florist volunteered to handle the flowers at cost. Slowly, our revised wedding took shape, smaller than originally planned, but infused with genuine care and support. The most unexpected source of help came from my boss, Linda. When I returned to work and apologetically explained the situation, her response surprised me. Rebecca, you've been an invaluable member of this team for 4 years, she said. The work you did on the harbor cleanup project alone saved us thousands in consulting fees. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. The board approved year-end bonuses last week. This is yours, $3,000. I can't replace what was taken from you, but I hope it helps. I was speechless with gratitude. The amount wouldn't restore our original plans, but combined with our savings and the support from friends, it made a meaningful celebration possible again. James's parents also stepped up their support. Over dinner at their home, Diana and Michael made an unexpected offer. We'd planned to contribute to the rehearsal dinner, Diana began. But given the circumstances, we'd like to redirect that money to help with the ceremony and reception instead. You don't have to do that, I protested. We want to, Michael insisted. You're going to be our daughter too, Rebecca. We want your day to be special. Their generosity brought tears to my eyes. While the money was helpful, what meant even more was their unequivocal message that I mattered to them, that I was worth investing in. Throughout this period, communication with my immediate family remained fraught. Mom sent daily texts alternating between guilt trips and attempts at reconciliation without accountability. Dad's messages were less frequent but more pointed, focusing on family obligation and moving past this nonsense. Amanda vacillated between tearful apologies and defensive justifications, often in the same message. I responded minimally, maintaining the boundary I'd established while working through my feelings. Dr. Patel helped me craft replies that were firm but not cruel, making clear that any reconciliation would require genuine acknowledgement of the wrong done and concrete steps to make amends. But what does making amends even look like in this situation? I asked during one therapy session. They can't give back money they don't have. Amanda and Mark have already used it for their house. Making amends isn't just about financial restitution, Dr. Patel explained. It's about demonstrating true understanding of the harm caused and taking steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. Your parents could acknowledge the pattern of favoritism, commit to therapy themselves, or find other ways to demonstrate that they value you equally. Grandma Rose became my strongest ally during this time. After staying with us for 2 days following her birthday disaster, she returned to her own home, called Daily. She shared stories about my grandfather that I'd never heard, how he'd noticed early on that I was being overshadowed and had suggested the wedding fund as a way to ensure I had something special just for me. He would be so proud of you for standing up for yourself, she told me. James always said you had a quiet strength that would emerge when you needed it most. One Saturday afternoon, she invited James and me to her house for tea. After serving us homemade cookies and cashing up on our revised wedding plans, she excused herself briefly and returned with a small wooden box. I've been thinking about what I can do to help, she said, placing the box on the table between us. I can't replace the full amount that was taken, but I want you to have these. Inside the box lay a strand of pearls, a pair of sapphire earrings, and a diamond bracelet. These were meant for you anyway, Grandma explained. The pearls were my mother's, the earrings your grandfather gave me on our 25th anniversary, and the bracelet was a gift from him on our 50th. I'd planned to give them to you on your wedding day, but I think you should have them now, both to wear for your wedding and to sell if you prefer. The bracelet alone was appraised at $12,000 last. Grandma, I can't take these, I protested, overwhelmed by her generosity. Yes, you can, she insisted. They're yours, Rebecca. I won't have your special day diminished because of what Robert and Catherine did. The jewelry represented not just financial value, but a tangible symbol that someone in my family had always seen me, had always planned for my happiness. I hugged Grandma tightly, tears streaming down my face. As we prepared to leave, Grandma pulled me aside for a private word. Have you decided about inviting your parents and Amanda to the wedding? The question had been weighing on me for weeks. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to exclude them the way they've excluded me from so many things. But another part feels like that's just perpetuating the cycle of hurt. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, Grandma assured me. But remember that inviting them is your choice, not your obligation. And if you do invite them, you can set conditions for their attendance. Her words gave me permission to approach the decision from a position of strength rather than obligation. On the drive home, James and I discussed the dilemma openly. I think I want to invite them, I said eventually. Not because I've forgiven what they did, but because I don't want their absence to cast a shadow over our day. I don't want to spend my wedding wondering if excluding them was the right choice. That makes sense, James agreed, but like your grandmother said, we can set boundaries around their involvement. That evening, we drafted a letter to my parents and Amanda. I explained that they were invited to attend our wedding, which would take place the following spring at a coastal park. However, I made clear that Dad would not be walking me down the aisle. Grandma Rose would have that honor, that they would be seated as regular guests rather than as parents of the bride, and that their attendance was contingent on respecting these boundaries without complaint or attempts to renegotiate. This invitation is not an indication that what happened has been forgotten or excused, I wrote. It is an opportunity for a new beginning, should you choose to accept it on these terms. Sending the letter felt like reclaiming my power. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was setting the terms of my relationship with my family rather than accepting whatever crumbs of attention they deigned to offer. As James and I continued planning our revised wedding, I realized something surprising. The celebration taking shape felt more authentically us than our original plans had been. Without the pressure to impress my parents or compete with Amanda's lavish wedding 5 years earlier, we were creating an event that truly reflected our values and relationship. Our guest list, though smaller, consisted entirely of people who had demonstrated genuine care for us. The park setting by the ocean connected us to how we'd met and our shared love of nature. The contributions from friends and family created a community feeling that a professionally catered event might have lacked. I think this might actually be better than what we originally planned, I confessed to James one night as we finalized the ceremony detail. Because it's truly ours, he agreed, kissing my forehead. Not a performance for your parents or an attempt to finally win their approval. His observation hit home. How much of my life had been shaped by the futile quest for my parents' validation? How many choices had I made hoping to finally earn the attention and approval they gave Amanda so freely? The wedding was no longer just about celebrating our love. They had become a declaration of independence from toxic family patterns, a statement that I deserved to be valued and prioritized. Whether my parents and sister attended or not, the day would mark not just my marriage to James but my commitment to never again accept being treated as less than. As spring approached, bringing our wedding date closer, I felt a growing sense of peace with our decisions. The hurt wasn't gone. I doubted it ever would be completely, but it no longer dominated my thoughts. Instead, I focused on building the future I wanted with James, creating new traditions and relationship patterns that would form the foundation of our life together. I want our family to be different, I told him as we lay in bed one night, his arm around me. If we have children someday, I want them all to know they're equally important, equally loved. They will, James promised. We've both seen what happens when parents play favorites. We won't repeat that mistake. His certainty comforted me. From the pain of my family's betrayal, a stronger vision for our future had emerged, one built on equality, respect, and genuine love rather than obligation and appearances. It wasn't the path I would have chosen, but I was beginning to recognize that it might lead somewhere better than where I'd been headed before. The morning of our wedding dawned with perfect weather, clear blue skies, a gentle breeze, and temperatures warm enough for our outdoor ceremony but cool enough to be comfortable. I stood at the window of the small cottage we'd rented near the park, watching early light dance across the ocean waves, hardly believing the day had finally arrived. A knock at the door broke my reverie. "It's Grandma," called a familiar voice. I opened the door to find Grandma Rose holding a garment bag and a small suitcase. At 75, she looked radiant in a lavender dress, her silver hair styled elegantly, her eyes bright with excitement. "Are you ready to become a bride?" she asked, hugging me tightly. "More than ready," I replied, meaning it completely. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of final preparations, boundary setting, and personal growth. My parents and Amanda had responded to my letter with predictable drama, hurt feelings, accusations of cruelty, attempts to renegotiate the terms I'd set. But I'd held firm, making clear that my boundaries weren't punishments but necessary protection. In the face of my unwavering stance, they'd eventually accepted the invitation on my terms. Our interactions remained strained, limited to necessary wedding details, but at least they'd respected the lines I'd drawn. Amanda had been particularly upset about not being included in the bridal party, especially after I'd been her maid of honor, but had ultimately conceded after Mark convinced her that creating additional conflict would only make things worse. The day unfolded like a dream. My friend Lisa helped with my makeup while Zoe arranged my hair in loose waves adorned with small white flowers. I wore my grandmother's pearls and sapphire earrings, along with a simple ivory dress we'd found at a boutique sale, not the designer gown I'd originally envisioned, but perfect for our beach-adjacent ceremony. James's sister Emma arrived with the bouquets, wildflowers and coastal greenery in shades of blue, purple, and white. The photographer's already at the park, she reported. Everything's set up and looks beautiful. At noon, we made our way to the state park where the ceremony would take place. A small clearing overlooking the ocean had been transformed with rows of white chairs, a driftwood arch draped with flowers, and glass lanterns lining the aisle. Our 50 guests mingled in the sunshine, the atmosphere relaxed and joyful. I spotted my parents and Amanda standing awkwardly near the back, dressed formally but looking uncertain of their place. I acknowledged them with a nod but didn't approach. Today wasn't about healing that rift, it was about celebrating the family James and I were creating together. As the ceremony time approached, guests took their seats. James waited beneath the arch with his best friend Ryan serving as best man. The small string quartet we'd hired began playing, and one by one, our wedding party proceeded down the aisle. James's sister Emma, my friends Lisa and Zoe, and James's brother Michael. Then it was my turn. Grandma Rose took my arm, her grip firm and supportive. "Ready, my dear?" "Ready," I confirmed, and we began our walk. The path to the altar represented so much more than the traditional journey of a bride. Each step with my grandmother beside me felt like an affirmation that I was worthy of celebration, worthy of being the center of attention for this one special day. As we passed the rows of smiling faces, friends, colleagues, James's family, and even my own family, I felt a profound sense of being truly seen. James's face when he caught sight of me contained everything I'd ever wanted: love, admiration, respect, and joy. No trace of disappointment that our wedding wasn't grander or more expensive, just pure happiness that we were enjoying our lives together. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promises that acknowledged both the joy and challenges of marriage. James's words especially moved me. "Rebecca," he said, holding both my hands in his, "I promise to be the family that chooses you first, that sees your worth without question or comparison. I promise to stand beside you through celebration and hardship, to honor your boundaries and support your growth. With you, I'm building a home where both of us are valued equally, where love doesn't come with conditions or competition." Tears streamed down my face as I responded with my own vows, committing to partnership based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the cheer from our guests seemed to lift us both into a new reality, one where we formed the center of our own family circle. The reception took place in a pavilion at the same park, decorated with string lights, more wildflowers, and photographs of our relationship journey. Zoe's wedding cake exceeded all expectations: 3 tiers of lemon cake with blueberry filling, decorated with fresh flowers that matched my bouquet. A friend's band played, filling the space with music that ranged from romantic ballads to dance numbers that got everyone on their feet. Grandma Rose gave the first toast, raising her glass with a steady hand. "To Rebecca and James," she said, her voice clear and strong. "May you build a life together founded on equal partnership, mutual respect, and genuine love, the kind that sees the true worth in each other every single day." James's father spoke next, welcoming me warmly into their family. Friends shared stories and good wishes. Conspicuously absent was a toast from my father, who sat silently at his table, my mother beside him looking uncomfortable but managing small smiles when caught my eye. Later, during the dancing, they approached somewhat hesitantly. Dad cleared his throat. "It was a lovely ceremony," he offered stiffly. "Very, you." Coming from him, it was as close to approval as I was likely to get. "Thank you for coming," I replied evenly. "I'm glad you could be here." Mom reached out as if to hug me, then seemed to think better of it. "You look beautiful, Rebecca, and James is a good man." "The best," I agreed, glancing across the pavilion to where my new husband chatted animatedly with Grandma Rose. "If you'll excuse me, I should get back to my guests." As I turned away, Mom called after me softly. "Rebecca, do you think, could we talk sometime, after the honeymoon?" I paused, considering. "We can try," I said finally. "But it would need to be with a family therapist present. I'm not interested in more conversations where my feelings are dismissed or minimized." She nodded quickly. "Whatever you think is best." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was an opening, a small possibility that with professional help and genuine effort, some new type of relationship might eventually be possible. Amanda approached next, bouncing No on her hip. That 10 months old, he was adorable in a tiny suit, reaching curiously for the flowers in my hair. "You did a wonderful job with everything," she said, seeming to genuinely mean it. "It's perfect." "Thank you," I replied, tickling No's chubby hand. "How are you enjoying the new house?" A flash of discomfort crossed her face at the direct reference to what had come between us. It's good. We're settled now. She hesitated, then added, the room we talked about, the guest room, it really is yours whenever you want it. I mean that. The offer was so inadequate compared to what had been taken that I almost laughed. But looking at her face, hopeful, uncertain, perhaps finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what she'd participated in, I felt a twinge of something like pity. I appreciate that, Amanda, I said carefully. But James and I will be staying in our apartment for now. After the honeymoon, we're starting to look for our own house. Her face fell slightly. Of course, that makes sense. As she walked away, I realized something important. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, I wasn't concerned about Amanda's feelings or trying to make things easier for her. I was prioritizing my own well-being, my own boundaries, and it felt right. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, cake-cutting, and heartfelt conversations with the people who truly mattered in our lives. James and I stole quiet moments together throughout, marveling at how perfectly the day had come together despite, or perhaps because of, the challenges we'd faced. Was it everything you hoped for? He asked as we swayed together during the last dance, the pavilion glowing with lantern light, stars visible through the open sides. More, I said honestly. It's exactly what we needed it to be. Later that night, after changing from my wedding dress into comfortable clothes for the drive to the airport hotel, I found Grandma Rose waiting to say goodbye. She pressed an envelope into my hand. What's this? I asked. A letter your grandfather wrote for your wedding day, she explained. He asked me to give it to you when the time came. I opened it with trembling hands, recognizing Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. Asterisk, my dearest Rebecca, asterisk. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means you've found someone worthy of your love and commitment. I wish I could be there to see the remarkable woman you've become and to welcome the person smart enough to recognize your extraordinary heart. Asterisk. Asterisk, remember that true family is built on love, respect, and genuine appreciation for each other. Sometimes the family we create matters more than the family we're born into. I hope your marriage gives you the appreciation and priority you've always deserved. Asterisk. Asterisk, the wedding fund was our way of ensuring you had something that was just for you, a tangible reminder that you matter deeply. However you've used it, I hope it brought you joy. Asterisk. Asterisk, all my love always. Asterisk. Asterisk, Grandpa James. Asterisk. Tears flowed freely as I looked up at Grandma. He knew, didn't he? Even back then, he saw what was happening. She nodded sadly. We both did. We tried to balance things where we could, to make sure you knew you were valued, even when your parents couldn't see what they were doing. I hugged her tightly, this woman who had been my most consistent advocate. Thank you for everything, for standing up for me, for supporting us, for being here today. I wouldn't have missed it for the world, she said firmly. Now go start your life with that wonderful man, create the family you deserve to have. James and I left amid a shower of flower petals, driving away toward our honeymoon and the future beyond. The wedding had cost far less than we'd originally planned, about $15,000 in total, cobbled together from our savings, gifts from James's parents, my work bonus, and the sale of the diamond bracelet, which I had ultimately decided to convert into something more practical for our future. But what we'd gained was immeasurable, a celebration truly reflective of our values, stronger boundaries with my family, deeper connections with friends who'd supported us, and most importantly, the unshakable knowledge that we were building our relationship on the right foundation. In the months that followed, we did attempt family therapy with my parents. The sessions were difficult, with Dad initially resistant to acknowledging any pattern of favoritism and Mom retreating into tears whenever confronted with specific examples. Progress was slow and uneven, with occasional backsliding into old patterns. But small shifts began to occur, moments of genuine listening, tentative acknowledgments of hurt caused, halting attempts at change. Amanda remained more peripheral to this healing process, busy with her own family and perhaps not yet ready to fully examine her role in the family dynamics. Our relationship settled into a cordial but distant pattern, no longer characterized by active conflict but not close either. Perhaps in time that would change, but I no longer hinged my happiness on her approval or inclusion. James and I did eventually find our own house, a modest but charming Cape Cod-style home nearer to the coast, with room for future growth and a garden I immediately filled with plants from Grandma Rose's yard. Each weekend we worked on making it truly ours, painting and furnishing one room at a time, creating the home we wanted rather than competing with anyone else's standards or expectations. Looking back on the tumultuous journey from the discovery of my missing wedding fund to where we are now, I can honestly say that losing that money led to gaining something far more valuable: self-respect, healthier boundaries, and a clearer vision for the kind of family James and I want to create. The wedding fund was never just about the money; it was about being valued, being prioritized, being seen. In fighting for those principles, I discovered a strength I hadn't known I possessed and a support network more genuine than I'd realized. The celebration we ultimately created honored not just our love but the journey of growth that brought us to that day. If you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued in your family, I hope my story gives you courage to stand up for yourself. Family patterns can be powerful, but they aren't unbreakable. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the determination to create something better than what we experienced growing up. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who always put others before you? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family challenges. Thank you for joining me today, and remember that you deserve to be valued just as you are, without having to earn it through constant sacrifice.